Okay, everyone. As you can see, we have a very distinguished panel assembled on the stage to discuss the 2020 and 2030 targets and what it will take to reach them. But before we start, I just want to take a quick moment to do a quick interactive voting exercise to get your blood flowing and preview the more extended voting exercise that we'll be doing on Thursday afternoon. So got to get your app out and go to this plenary session on your program. And can we see the first question on the screen? So the first question on the screen is you have to tell us what you think is the most politically salient rationale for protecting forests. If we want to convince all those other people to join the fire brigade, what argument is going to be the most potent? Is it climate change? Is it poverty and inequality? Is it food security? Is it health? Or is it justice? So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to make your choice, and then we're going to show the results. So get into that app and press the button. 10, 9, I don't see you guys voting. You need to vote. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You need a little more time? Okay, 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, let's see the votes of the technologically savvy part of the crowd. Okay. All right. So climate change is still far and away. The 41% think that's the most compelling, but we do have a good spread across the others. Next, poverty and inequality, followed by food security and justice, and then health. So kind of interesting, and maybe that'll come out in the discussion. All right, let's see the next question. And this is going to be tough. You're going to have to go with your gut on this one. So the question is, when do you expect tropical deforestation rates to peak and start declining? Did it already happen in 2016, and the 2017 numbers are starting us on a downward course that will continue? Do you expect it to happen by 2020? Whoops, there's a mistake. The third choice should be by 2025, and then by 2030, or after 2030, which would blow a pretty big hole in the targets we're about to discuss. Remember, the third choice is by 2025. Okay? 10 seconds. This is pretty easy. You don't have to read a whole sentence or anything. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see the results. Oh, my. Okay, so it's kind of the intermediate between the 2020 targets and the 2030 targets with a nice normal curve in the other side. Only 5% of you think that it's already happened. Okay, well, that's enough fun, and we'll get back to do more voting like this on Thursday afternoon. But now, it is my pleasure to introduce James Astill as our moderator for this panel. As many of you know, James is the Lexington columnist for the Economist magazine, and he has most recently been the Washington correspondent. He's previously been the South Asia bureau chief and worked as the energy and environment editor for that magazine. I got to know him in 2010 when he was preparing that amazing special report on forests, and he won the Grantham Prize for environmental journalism for that article. So now James is going to ask some of the tough questions to some of our very capable panelists on what it's going to take to reach those 2020, 2030 targets. James, take it away.
Thank you very much, Francis. Thank you all. Yes, as Francis says, I'm a journalist, and because I'm a journalist, I'm allowed to be blunt. Indeed, I'm supposed to be blunt. This is entirely congruent with the urgent need of this conference. As Per Faro of NICVI, our Norwegian host, said to us last night in our preparatory conversations, we need to banish from this conference talk of incrementalism, modest upsides, pragmatic solutions. And with your help, that is absolutely what I want us to do in this panel discussion. The title of the discussion is Achieving the 2020 and 2030 Targets, What Will It Take? So let's be very clear about what that implies. First of all, it tells us why we have a right to be ambitious. Halting deforestation is not only an urgent necessity from a climate perspective, it's also something that the most powerful people in the world have on many occasions committed themselves to doing. The SDGs include a pledge to halt deforestation by 2020. The New York Declaration on Forests include pledges to half natural forest loss by 2020 and end it by 2030. But of course, behind those grand, rather inspiring, rather reassuring commitments, there are tropical forest countries with development trajectories that are leading in absolutely the opposite direction, towards massive deforestation. The latest global Forest Watch numbers, which we've already spoken of today, and I'm sure we will speak of yet more over the next 2 days, show how absolutely incompatible this is with our global needs and indeed our global commitments. So which is it to be? The status quo or the radical change that we need? That's the context for this panel. Really, it's the context for the conference. We've committed to ending tropical deforestation. We're failing very badly in that task. So what would it take to succeed? Represented on this terrific panel that we have to discuss this are most of the key tropical forest countries, as well as government, the private sector, and civil society. We have Yaneth Alegría, who's the Vice Minister of Environmental Planning from Colombia. We have Tarsicio Granizo, who's the Minister of Environment from Ecuador. Next to the Minister, Dr. Putera Parthama, who's the DG for Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment and Forestry in Indonesia. And next to him, Svein Holsether, who's the CEO of Yara, global fertilizer company. Next to Svein, we have Anderson Tanoto, who's the director of RGE, huge enterprise which includes one of Indonesia's biggest pulp and paper companies, known to all of you, I think, and also known to you quite controversially. And next to Anderson, we have Adriana Ramos from the Instituto Socioambiental in Brazil, representing, therefore, civil society. I will expect all of you, all of these eminent panelists, to honor Per Faro's injunction, and we have discussed this beforehand, and I will be quite strict in enforcing it. They must be direct, they must be as candid as they feel they can be about the crisis that we're in, they must answer the questions that I will put to them. And I would ask you, the audience, to please approach this panel and to frame the questions that we need from you in that same spirit, in that same simple and direct way. We have an hour and a half still for this panel, and after our discussion on the stage, I'll take as many questions from you as I can. A quick process note on that is, you know, we want you to send questions where possible through the app, but if anybody wants to put a question in a language other than English, it would be most convenient for us, I think, if you would just raise your hands. We should have a microphone or microphones doing the round. So if you raise your hands about 45 minutes in, when I'll hope to get to you for questions, if you have a question other than a question in English, we'll try to get to you. If you have a question in English, send it through the app. With that, thank you for your patience, and Vice Minister Alegría. Colombia has seen a massive increase in its deforestation rate in the past 2 years. Mainly, we think, because of these areas that were previously inaccessible because of the war becoming accessible. Was that inevitable? What should have been done to avoid some of the damage that this has caused?
Buenos días a todos. Antes de darle respuesta, sí quiero agradecer al gobierno noruego, al ministro de Ambiente, por permitirnos estar aquí en este evento que es muy importante. De igual manera a los gobiernos de Reino Unido y Alemania también por todo el apoyo que nos han prestado a nosotros en este proceso del control a la deforestación. Bueno, Colombia realmente es por su riqueza. Hemos avanzado, yo pienso que en los últimos años hemos avanzado enormemente en acciones para la conservación y la protección de nuestros recursos naturales. Sin embargo, el tema de la forestación tiene unos factores de deforestación muy específicos, sobre todo en la zona de la Amazonía, porque hay otras regiones, como lo demostraron las cifras de las alertas de deforestación, hay otras regiones en las cuales hemos disminuido la deforestación, como es la región andina, región Caribe. Sin embargo, en la región Amazonía se nos ha incrementado por muchos factores. Son las zonas en las que más existían, obviamente, conflicto armado, y pues no solamente en Colombia, sino a nivel internacional, en aquellos países donde existen zonas de conflicto armado. Sabemos que los países que han entrado en este proceso de fin a la guerra han también sufrido incrementos en deforestación. Entonces, es porque ya esos territorios que eran en cierta manera inaccesibles, o sea, que no se podía ingresar porque estaban siendo de poder de las las guerrillas, digámoslo así, ahorita están siendo objeto de otro tipo de actividades, incluso ilícitas, como los cultivos de igual manera, también el acaparamiento de tierra en Colombia, creo que uno de los factores de deforestación mucho más fuertes es el acaparamiento de tierra y de igual manera la transformación el tumbar el bosque para realizar otro tipo.
Thank you for bearing with us, everybody. The time says 27 minutes. Why are we counting?
Esta no interfiere.
20?
¿Aló? ¿Ahora sí? Bueno, entonces continúo diciendo que los temas del acaparamiento de tierra es uno de los factores de deforestación mucho más fuertes y de igual manera la ganadería. Entonces se ha venido realizando desde el gobierno nacional un esfuerzo muy grande por hacerle control a la deforestación. Tenemos la CICO, que es la Comisión Intersectorial de Control de la Deforestación, donde desde el Ministerio de Medio Ambiente es quien articula a todos los actores que deben participar en ese control de deforestación. Ahí están las Fuerzas Armadas, están diferentes ministerios, los ministros de diferentes agendas ministeriales del orden nacional, como el Ministerio de Transporte, el Ministerio de Minas, el Ministerio de Agricultura, que es muy importante en este proceso de transformación o de la tierra y de las actividades que se realizan de las diferentes actividades productivas. Y no solamente está el sector gubernamental, también está el sector privado, participa también en el caso que se requiera, y es muy importante, no solamente la estrategia nos permite a nosotros actuar desde el orden nacional, sino ir a los territorios, porque el control se debe hacer también con los entes territoriales, lo que son las alcaldías, las gobernaciones, las corporaciones autónomas que están en el territorio. Pero también hemos entendido desde el gobierno nacional que es muy importante la comunidad, o sea, en el sentido que se puedan brindar otras alternativas a los campesinos, a los indígenas, a los afro, de que puedan ver el bosque como una oportunidad de desarrollo sostenible. ¿Sí se escucha?
I'm going to rudely interrupt you because I want you to make an example of you for the rest of the panel. Are you getting the translation? Yeah. Colombia had a very respectable record before the last 2 years. The last 2 years have been calamitous for the reasons that you describe. What are the lessons that you've learned from that? What should have been done that was not done to prevent that calamity of deforestation?
Bueno, de todos modos, más que no se haya hecho, venimos en un proceso de fortalecimiento cada vez más de las actividades. Entonces, lo repito, en los últimos años hemos fortalecido muchísimo las acciones que se deben involucrar en el control de la deforestación y fortalecer mucho sobre todo el tema de control. Aquí está el general Parra y definitivamente son los dos componentes. Es muy importante el tema de hacer control en el territorio, pero ese control también que sea un autocontrol, es decir, que están las Fuerzas Armadas, pero de igual manera si se le dan otras oportunidades también a los campesinos, a los afro, de que ellos tengan otro tipo de alternativas productivas y de obtener recursos, no hagan deforestación, porque a veces la experiencia que tenemos en Colombia es que lamentablemente el campesino va y tumba pero atrás está la maquinaria que es quien le paga al campesino. Pero entonces si involucramos a nuestros campesinos, si le damos otras alternativas, obviamente ellos ya van a dejar, se vuelven corresponsables de esas acciones de control que se realizan desde el gobierno, y pues vamos a tener también un autocontrol, no solamente de Fuerzas Armadas, sino también de la misma comunidad. Pero también está el tema, bueno, ahí lo combiné, está el tema de control, pero también el tema precisamente de darle otras oportunidades a las comunidades. Ahí tenemos proyectos muy importantes como los proyectos de Visión Amazonía, los proyectos de Corazón de la Amazonía, y los proyectos que obviamente están, y que agradecemos muchísimo al gobierno de Noruega porque están financiados, donde también se le dan otras oportunidades a los excombatientes precisamente del conflicto y se involucran en actividades productivas para que poder obviamente hacer control y disminuir este tema de tala de los bosques.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask one follow-up question and then we'll carry on down the line. I suppose I feel a little bit dismayed by that answer, that the change in your country's deforestation record is so dramatic, it seems to demand more of an introspection, more of a reckoning with what could have been done differently. And now you're on the cusp of another change, a political transition. With that in mind, do you fear that there will be another disruption? And if so, what can be done to ensure that the control measures that you described are not disrupted by this next political disruption?
Bueno, algo muy importante y es que las acciones, todas las estrategias, tenemos la estrategia de control integral al control de la deforestación. Son estrategias que obedecen obviamente a los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, acuerdos de cooperación internacional y también a nuestro plan de desarrollo. Entonces, el gobierno que llegue es un gobierno que además ya conocen, porque obviamente los gobernantes se conocen los proyectos que se vienen desarrollando, y pues como están sujetos al cumplimiento de estos acuerdos internacionales, no deben tener una sostenibilidad y una continuidad. Yo creo que no nos preocupa mucho desde el gobierno nacional, que no, al contrario, estamos seguros de que el nuevo gobierno va a acoger todos los programas que se vienen desarrollando, y igualmente es un compromiso del ministro, del doctor Luis Gilberto Murillo, y del presidente actual, en esa comisión de empalme. Comisión de empalme es cuando entra un gobierno y otro saliente y revisan todos los programas. Un punto o un tema estratégico es el tema de control de la deforestación y todas las acciones y estrategias que se han implementado obviamente para ese control y que tenga continuidad. Es un tema que está en la agenda de la comisión, y con toda seguridad lo podemos asegurar, está en la agenda del nuevo gobierno porque es un tema indispensable para nuestro país.
Thank you very much indeed, Vice Minister. Minister, can you tell us a little bit more about the agreement that you've reached with Germany and Norway, and tell us about its implications for Ecuador's forests?
Bueno, muchas gracias por la invitación. ¿Se escucha, no? Gracias al gobierno y al pueblo noruego. En efecto, nosotros acabamos hace pocos minutos de firmar un acuerdo histórico entre Ecuador, Alemania y Noruega para la implementación de red. Ecuador es uno de los primeros países en tener un plan de acción red, y este financiamiento nos va a ayudar a implementar ese plan de acción. Esto es un reconocimiento a los esfuerzos que ha hecho el Ecuador en los últimos años por reducir la deforestación. Estos Red Early Movers es un reconocimiento a un esfuerzo que se ha realizado en los últimos años. Y eso implica, pues, al ser un país megadiverso, una responsabilidad muy grande. Recordemos que el Ecuador es un país relativamente pequeño, con relativamente menos bosques tropicales que otros países vecinos, y por lo tanto cualquier tasa de deforestación, por más pequeña que sea, impacta en el total, en el contexto total del país. Entonces, para nosotros detener la deforestación es fundamental, pero nosotros creemos que el tema de la deforestación es un problema multidimensional, no es solamente un tema de conservación, es un tema que tiene que ver con productividad, que tiene que ver con uso del suelo, que tiene que ver con alternativas para la gente a la deforestación, que tiene que ver con marcos legales. Entonces, tratamos de enfocar el tema hacia una solución multidimensional y Red nos va a ayudar a eso.
Thanks very much indeed, Ambassador. Let's keep moving down the line and we'll come back to you. Putera, amidst the grimness of these latest Global Forest Watch figures, we do have some slight encouragement, I think, in Indonesia, from Indonesia's performance last year on forest and on peatlands. How encouraged by this should we be, and how do you account for it?
Thank you. Deforestation used to be a scary word for Indonesians. And the reason is because our country is usually associated with huge deforestation taking place year by year, the rate and the total area deforested. But today, like you said, I think we love to talk about deforestation because our figure indicates also almost similar with the figure provided by Global Forest Watch. We are experiencing a significant decrease in the rate of deforestation in the last 3 years. So from about 1 million hectares a year in the year 2014-2015 until now less than 500,000 hectares in 2017-2018. When you ask about how encouraged you are with this short time series, you have to be strongly encouraged because this change, the significant change, which is one of a lot good things taking place recently in Indonesia, is a result of a series of policy change, a result of a better cooperation among stakeholders, and much better implementation of the law. So law enforcement is much better now. So when we keep doing these good things, we believe we'll keep the trajectory and we will fulfill what we put in our national determined contribution, which is, I forgot about the figure, but very small number of deforestation. So you got to be encouraged, and we strongly believe under our government, our new administration, and we are going soon have a new one. Well, not new one, maybe the same administration, but with new periods. We really believe that we are going moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for the good tidings. But then, let's settle. Let me take the opportunity to push a little more. So in 2009, which is of course a time when Indonesia was getting a lot of heat over its deforestation rate, when Indonesia certainly did not want to talk about deforestation. Nonetheless, President Yudhoyono signed that pledge to cut Indonesia's emissions with a higher target in the event that he got a lot of international support. 8 years later, there's been no results-based payments made to Indonesia despite all of the efforts that it has made to cut its emissions and its deforestation rate. Why is that? And is actually Indonesia still interested in REDD+ finance?
We are still interested, and we are much more ready right now to implement REDD+ in the country. The reason being why it takes so long, because there are many preparations have to be done, including the change in the regulations, and also we need to establish new institutions to deal with the disbursement of the fund like that. So it takes a lot of preparation, but now we are ready. The strategy is already in place, and I think we are looking forward that we are going to be one of the countries to implement REDD+ in the very near future. Yeah.
But I mean, clearly there has been political disagreements. The readiness has taken so long because it has not been straightforward. It has not been simply a case of putting institutions and procedures in place. Are you saying that the politics of results-based payments are now all sorted out? There's a thoroughgoing appetite for this across the government?
I should say so, yeah.
You should say so, but what do you think?
I must say so. I want to say yes. I want to say yes that political issue is already solved in many aspects, and of course we are a country of 250 million people with more than 15 parties and big parliament. So we are the third largest democracy, and I think everything takes a longer time than in other countries. So, but we are moving forward, and you got to believe that I say yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for giving us something interesting, saving your career, upholding, the reputation of Indonesia all in one answer, which is no small feat. Thank you.
Well, I'm approaching a retirement age. So.
Svein, let me give you a sort of relative softball introductory question, though I have a harder one for you too. The failure of the climate finance mechanisms that we all looked for to push REDD+ forwards 8-9 years ago has meant that there's certainly been increasing focus on private companies and the pledges, the very encouraging pledges that large private companies have made to cleanse their supply chains of deforestation. How realistic, actually, is that pledge? And do we expect too much from the private sector in our own despondency of the performance of the public sector?
No, we don't.
Sorry, forgive me, sir. That's a question for Svein.
Oh, sorry.
So, I mean, I think there's a great responsibility in the private sector as well, and there's a huge responsibility here. But not only because it's the right thing to do, I think it's because it's a smart thing to do. And I think we have to get away from this notion that the focus on the environment and the sustainable development goals are barriers to business. I think we have to turn it around and see it as an opportunity to business. And I'm not just saying that. We spent a lot of time studying this, and I've been part of the Business and Sustainable Development Commission, which is a group of 34 business leaders, investors, and leaders of NGOs and so on to see, okay, what does it mean if we embed the sustainable development goals into how we run the businesses and put real numbers and actions behind that? And the business opportunity is $12 trillion of value creation every year if we embed that into how we work. But then how do we do that? That's the next challenge then, and it requires a lot of us as business leaders as well to embed this. We've taken on that challenge. We've built our strategy plan around the sustainable development goals. We're in agriculture, and agriculture represents 25% of greenhouse gas emissions. Half of that is through change of land use, which is pretty much cutting down forests to clear land for agriculture. So for us, that also represents a business opportunity. We're a fertilizer producer. We create nutrients to produce more food on the land that is available so that we can make agriculture more productive. And that's quite a big dilemma for everyone in the world. There's 800 million people that don't get enough food in the world today. And at the same time, we see the harm to the environment of clearing more land. We have to solve both of those challenges, and that is possible. And we can do our part, but it will require a much more holistic thinking throughout the whole value chain, more transparency. And it's important to bring together both policymakers, investors, and businesses to do that. And we've taken some real actions as a response to that from this report from the Business and Sustainable Development Commission to create something called the Food and Land Use Commission, which is a direct result of that, trying to see the totality of the whole food production chain.
So thank you for that. A slightly harder question, because it goes to the absolute fundamental core of your business. You mentioned the environmental devastation that comes from deforestation. Of course, your own business has been directly responsible for a lot of environmental damage too. Chemical fertilizers, feed the world. They've allowed us to support this enormous population. But chemical fertilizers, or perhaps I should say the misuse or overuse of chemical fertilizers has also done a great deal of environmental harm. How do you carry on doing the former, feeding humanity, but massively reducing the latter? And specifically, what incentives or new regulations would support better use or less environmentally harmful use of chemical fertilizers?
Well, I absolutely think it's possible to do both, and I don't particularly like the use the chemical fertilizer. I rather this is really naturally nutrients like nitrogen that we're taking out. 78% of the air that we breathe is nitrogen. And
well, I suppose I'm making the distinction from manure, but call them fertilizers, industrial fertilizers if you prefer.
And it's clear that that the use of fertilizer is not optimal, and that's why it's important for us as an industry to take responsibility to convey the message on the right use of fertilizer, the right type of fertilizer, working with the farmers to find the right solutions for the soil condition and the crop. And as a company, we do spend a lot of resources on this. In the last year, our company has met with 1 million farmers, helping them to understand the specific needs to their soil and to their crop to drive this. But back to how do we drive this, and this is key, and I would like to see much more transparency on this. As consumers, none of us have any clue about the carbon footprint of the food that we eat. We have no clue how it's produced, and I'd like to see a standardized labeling so that when you buy a piece of food in the supermarket, that you can see at the same place as you see calories and vitamins and so on, I'd like to see carbon footprint on it, because that drives behavior. That means that all of us as consumers can direct our spending to food that is produced in a sustainable way, which in turn will drive demand for products from the farmers that are produced in the right way. Today, the farmers don't get paid anything for producing environmentally friendly, so there are no incentives in place, and I'd like to see that.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Anderson, I hope you can see me okay. There's so many of you that you're quite a distance from me, but I'm very pleased to see you there. So it's often said that Indonesia has plenty enough degraded land available for all the new plantations it needs to grow its economy. Nobody's suggesting it should compromise on its economic growth, but still, therefore, by avoiding cutting natural forest. Is this true?
James, I think thank you for that, the question, Your Excellencies, Dirjen Putra. It's a pleasure to be here. Straight to the question, I fundamentally believe that is possible. Indonesia has 141 million hectares of forest, and it's a very large area. From west to east. It's about 6 hours, almost to the coast of North America. If you peel the onion and look at the numbers, there are immense amount of degraded areas. We call it non-forested areas, to actually supplement Indonesia's land use growth. The key for us to actually is define what is forest and what is not forest. And this is some of the challenges that we've been facing in the last 5-7 years. As we enter to this definition of no deforestation, we're talking about maybe more technical definitions such as high carbon stock and a few others. But there hasn't been enough effort placed in to define those metrics and parameters. That's number one. Number two, there hasn't been enough understanding at a large-scale landscape level which are the areas that are production areas and which are the areas that are no-go areas to be protected. As a private sector, it is absolutely now imperative for us to produce and grow sustainably and decouple our growth with deforestation. I think it's only wise, it's only intelligent, and it makes total business sense. And the clarity is to define which areas are forested and which areas are not forested. And the areas where we can grow, we should be growing and intensifying through sustainable use of fertilizers. Areas to be protected, we should protect at all costs. Whether it's private sector, whether it's public sector taking the lead, all of us have to have a role to play in that protection area.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I very much appreciate the ambiguity that you point to. But something that should not be ambiguous, as I understand it, is the President's moratorium on exploitation of peatland areas. That was very clear. Not only was it very clear, it's also, with the commitments of the private sector, one of the rare but absolute sources of hope that we've had in this area in the last few years. So why has your company found that so problematic and been in such contestation with the government over the exploitation of those peatland areas?
I think maybe we just take a step back, and I would like to defer also to the Minister, to the Dirjen on this. We've been very supportive of this initiative. The key is to have a very good dialogue between the public sector and the private sector. For us, as I shared, the clarity is very important. We have a role for responsible peatland management, whether it's production or protection areas. For us, abandoning landscapes is not a solution. As we know, in 2015, unmanaged peatlands result in far greater emissions through fire and many other incidences of unmanaged landscapes. We believe we have to play a role in managing these landscapes cohesively overall. And that's what we've done. We've protected a large chunk of our peatland areas. We are producing in a sustainable manner. And we're also putting in a layer of transparency in the way we're engaging our stakeholders. We've set up an independent expert working group to get inputs to continue to improve our practices. For us, that cohesive approach on sustainable development has to be a conversation that we're having, because the last thing we want is to pit business and the environment against each other. Because if we keep putting businesses and environment on the opposite side of the equations, there's no end to this. We have to put them in the same side of the equation. We have to find solutions. And we have to grow sustainably. And not only putting opposite ends of the conversation. So.
Right. So I'm sure we can all agree that conflict is very often a waste of energy and not the direction we need to be heading in. But you're introducing ambiguity to the moratorium that I don't think is there. It's a moratorium on development of peatlands. And you're talking about managed and unmanaged peatlands as if you are the arbiter of what's acceptable exploitation and unacceptable exploitation within the peatland area. That's not what I read in the moratorium.
So I think there's no ambiguity. The moratorium clearly states there's no new development of peatland. And I think all private sector is behind that. And we are part of that as well. So I think there's no ambiguity with that ministerial decree, and we're fully supportive of the Indonesian government for this initiative. It's great because, as I shared, we should keep this momentum up for Indonesia to continue to be able to be recognized for all the good work that it's done. So for us, there's absolutely no ambiguity in that. For where we're producing in the areas that we've developed over the last 20 years, those areas, abandoning these areas is not a solution. Because if we abandon them, it's going to be in a much worse risk of various other encroachment happening and other risks that we're putting ourselves to. So I'm standing on the same side of the equation. I care as much for the environment as everyone else does. I think I'm probably one of the few that's under 30 here. I mean, the future of the world is also my future. And I really genuinely believe that we have to be a solution.
Out there. But can I put out a request for somebody who is more expert on peatlands than I am to ask a question or to issue a clarification on whether Anderson is right that his company should carry on developing those peatlands areas because it would be more environmentally damaging for his company to withdraw from those areas. Is that right? Should he continue managing those areas, exploiting, developing those areas, because it would be more environmentally damaging to withdraw from them? We'll come to questions, and I look forward to your questions or clarifications. Keep them simple and to the point. I'm sure Anderson will very much look forward to that too. Thank you, Anderson. Adriana, so alas, after so much good news from Brazil, we've had 2 really rubbish years, frankly. Really dismal figures last year and this year from Brazil. From the perspective of civil society, which played such a role in sort of changing the conversation in Brazil to get that original push for more control, etc., going, what can be done to arrest this most worrying situation?
Well, I think that we in civil society have at least 3 roles to play in this issue, and I think that the reduction of deforestation that Brazil achieved was really based on these joint efforts of civil society, especially together with the government. I think that the first one is to push the agenda, to make pressure. And for example, the soy moratorium, which is a good example of things that went on, wouldn't have happened if Greenpeace hadn't put the chicken in front of McDonald's. So I think that putting pressure is a very important issue. The second one is to raise awareness. Even Brazil have achieving what it has achieved, we are still struggling on that. Just to give an idea, in the region that today is the biggest agriculture frontier of Brazil, the Mato Piba, which joins 4 different states, a joint of companies led by John Deere have been sponsoring a climate denier conference in all municipalities to farmers. So it's been hard to push this agenda with farmers if you have the private sector working in the other way around. I think that the third thing is one thing that we are ready to do. I think that civil society, mainly together with science, as Carlos and Robbie have shown here, we are able to raise knowledge, experience, and to help on how doing things. So the question on how to do cannot be our new comfort zone in which we stand by saying that we don't know how to do and then we don't know nothing. Let's try, let's failure, let's have success, and let's do something, because this is the point. The point is to really have political will to do something.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me ask you a follow-up question, because I want to make sure we do cover this question, and I fear that we'll run out of time and I won't come back to you. And that's follow-up question is this. The Forest and Climate Agenda is supposed to have embraced the rights and the positive contributions of indigenous peoples. That appears to be most critical, and indeed most progress appears to have been made in Brazil. How encouraged by that are you actually? How much progress has been made? How much further is there still to go?
This is very important, James, because this is the worst setback that we are seeing in Brazil nowadays. We have a strong struggle in Congress with a bank that says they represent the rural sector, and they are going against all the advances that we had in Constitution and in legislations regarding indigenous people's rights. They want even to approve a legislation to say that it's possible and necessary to plant soy inside indigenous lands. So this is really using a lot of our efforts and energy to stop these setbacks, and it's very tiring to see that all the discussion that we have in forum like this do not reflect inside the Congress with the representatives of the rural sector. And this risk of putting all indigenous people's rights in Brazil under threat is something that will definitely threat deforestation, because the establishment and the implementation, the recognition of indigenous territory was a key part of our strategy to stop deforestation.
More work for Brazilian civil society there then, sure. Minister Granizo, can I
Sure.
put a question to you? So Ecuador is a little bit of a pioneer in terms of securing money for REDD+. You got money from the Green Climate Fund last year. I think you're one of the first countries to complete the UN FCCC requirements for results-based finance as well. Can you please tell us what effect this has had on the politics of conservation and a sustainable management of land and forests in Ecuador? What are the politics at home, if you like, of results-based finance?
Bueno, es realmente un cambio en cómo el Estado ve el tema ambiental en general. Nosotros ahora en el Ecuador, puedo decirlo con todas las palabras, tenemos un presidente que es ambientalista y eso hace la diferencia, porque eso da apoyo político a lo que hace en este caso el Ministerio del Ambiente. El Ecuador, por ejemplo, está liderando ahora un proceso en la Amazonía de un proyecto en donde por primera vez el Fondo Verde Climático y el GEF se juntan para detener la deforestación en la Amazonía. Es la primera vez que los dos fondos contribuyen a un mismo proyecto. Y por el otro lado, junto con Colombia, estamos buscando la forma de que los 8 presidentes amazónicos se sienten en una mesa a hacer un compromiso para reducir a cero la deforestación neta hasta el 2030, para cuidar los ríos y para proteger a los pueblos indígenas y garantizar la conectividad ecosistémica en la Amazonía. Eso demuestra que hay un interés real y eso demuestra la cooperación, que hay un interés real de detener la deforestación en el Ecuador. Más allá de eso, el Ecuador también, el presidente de la República, no el Ministerio del Ambiente, el presidente lanzó un programa que se llama Reverdecer Ecuador. It's like go green again. Y eso incluye varias actividades, 3 de las cuales están relacionadas directamente con red. El uno es un nuevo modelo de gestión de manejo forestal, un nuevo modelo de planificación y uso del suelo en todo el país y lo que nosotros llamamos el impulso a este concepto que se llama bioeconomía, que es precisamente el tratar de utilizar los recursos naturales y la biodiversidad del Ecuador, que es un país megadiverso, para ir saliendo poco a poco del extractivismo de recursos no renovables.
Let me try and ask the question in a slightly different way. Is there a difference politically in Ecuador between this payment for performance method or as opposed to just regular development aid? Which is better? Results-based finance or ODA?
Son complementarios. No puedes decir si uno es mejor que el otro. Yo creo que son complementarios. El uno reconoce los esfuerzos que ha hecho el país en los últimos años, el otro es nuevos fondos, de nuevas ideas probablemente, pero yo diría que son absolutamente y totalmente complementarios.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm going to ask one more question of Putera, and then I'm going to hope that we've got lots of questions from you, which Hege is going to put up. And again, if anybody wants to ask a question in a language other than English, we'll come to you too. Putera, 2 years ago, I think now, less than 2 years ago perhaps, Indonesia became the first country to qualify for a license to export its verified legal timber to the EU. Have you seen much upside from that FLEGT process? And if there has been upside, has there been enough upside to justify all the time and all the effort that went into that licensing process?
Yeah, thank you very much for raising this issue, which I love to talk a lot about this because yes, Indonesia is still the first and still the only country qualified for the licensing of the FLEGT, which is a very demanding criteria for legality and sustainability. And we learned a lot from the process, which took more than 10 years. Among others, we learned about that policy must be developed involving all stakeholders, transparencies, and also we learned that this soft approach toward tackling the illegal logging is doable. It can be done, and as long as all stakeholders are involved and supportive, it can be done. In fact, right now we are waiting for more progress from the other end, from the demand sides, because right now one of the most difficult questions I got to answer in the country when I was in my previous position, being the DG for the responsible for the issue, is that a question whether all of these things will give the industry or the business good things. Like for example, what we expect from the outset is when we only export legal timber, legally proven timber produced from sustainably managed forests, then the market will give more appreciation. We will get a better price and of course more market sharing, because we expect consumer will prefer more on legally proven timber other than other source of timber or wood product. So for that, we are still waiting for more effort from the demand side. Because if that's, tackling this issue, this illegal logging and deforestation require the effort from both sides. It's nonsense if we only tackle from the supply side. As long as there are still countries or markets are willing to receive, to buy non-legal timber, then it's a nonsense.
So on the supply side, in terms of your own governance, it's been beneficial. In terms of that promise of rich market access, it hasn't yet come through.
Not yet.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you for that. Hege, can we have some questions? I think they should pop up there and on the screens in front of us. And they are very kindly being curated for me, so I absolve myself of blame for the very tough questions I hope we're about to be able to put to our panel. How's that going? Do we have microphones in the room? Fine. Let's if we have microphones in the room, let's take one or two questions from you whilst we sort out the technology. Do we have microphones in the room? Yes. But please, everybody, we have 25 minutes, lots of people in the room, I hope lots of questions. Make them short, sharp, pointed, informative. I don't want any windy, statements, please. There's a microphone coming around. Please go for the hands. Okay, well, let's let the gentleman ask his question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Patrick Alley from Global Witness. In none of the presentations we've heard all through the morning has the word forest degradation been mentioned. And of course, forest degradation leads to deforestation. And by not mentioning it, it leaves open the status quo of, for example, activities like industrial scale logging in the forests. The question is, unless we ignore Per Faro's order to not consider incremental changes, should we not actually agree, if this conference is to achieve its objectives, to keep industrial scale activities out of primary forests?
Pak Putera, do you want to answer that? Do you want to make that specific to Indonesia? Well, let's make it as specific as we can, and we'll get the most specific answer that we can. Pak Putera.
Yeah, can you help me a little bit paraphrasing the question?
So I think the question is, if we can't afford more degraded forest, more additional degradation, should we not be keeping industrial, minimizing industrial logging of natural forests? I think that's the question, is it?
Well, if you talk about primary forest, it's very clear. We stop licensing on primary forest. But for the license that's already there, what we are doing is to ensure that the management done by the companies are in line with the right how to manage forest. Because the system of silviculture is a bit technical. We are employing in Indonesia. It's actually copying what happened in the nature. We are cutting only trees that are going to die anyway, and take only the growth, and then leave the stand will recover in a couple decades. So it's just a consequence of the nature of forest being a multiple function. We got to obtain the economical benefit from the forest, but without damaging the forest. So we cannot say that we will stop taking the economic benefits of our forest. We cannot say that, but we are committed to do it in the best way, so there is no natural forest degradation taking place.
Okay,
So,
so I think the answer is a no, but in a sector where governance
Yeah.
is improving.
Yeah.
Let's get some of these questions. Okay, what support from the international community is needed to prevent further backsliding of forest efforts in Brazil? Adriana, do you want to take that?
Yeah. Well, I think that the first thing is something that Norway and Germany have been doing for a long time, is to support indigenous people and local communities in developing their projects and taking care of their territories. I think that the other thing, we have to think about what we are buying from Brazil. We have to improve regulations and improve demand for certification, but real certification, not those that are created to make people think that they are doing the right thing without having a real social control on what's going on the room. And I think that we are in a very critical political situation in Brazil. So I think that all the multilateral system has a role in terms of pushing Brazil into amplify democracy, transparency, and investments. Because what we are seeing now is that the money that goes, for example, for the Amazon Fund, it's mainly the money that's running the environmental agenda in Brazil and all the agenda of combating deforestation. And so we have to bring back the conditions of implementing public policies that we had before when we managed to reduce it by having national budget to that. And that will need a little bit push from everybody inside and outside Brazil.
So that's what we should do. Just another sort of quick, reality-based query. Same question, really, that I asked the Vice Minister. You've got a political transition, perhaps, coming down the line with an election due. We don't know if it'll be held, but it's due in October, I think.
October, yeah.
How robust is your forest governance regime? How liable to be upset by another political transition?
Yeah, we are afraid that we won't have many many renovation in Congress. So this strong force of this rural bank inside the Congress, which is important to say that represents less the rural producers and more the landowners, so they have quite different perspectives and interests on that. We don't think that will change a lot. So although we have a robust legal framework, we are slowly making it weak. And so we will need a lot of support in terms of advocating to guarantee the maintenance of the rights and the policies that are there, and to improve our framework in more regulations so that we really can make this transition for a more sustainable agriculture, for example.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. Let's hope for another question. Let me get up. How do you view the role of multilateral trade rules and bilateral trade relationships in either supporting or undermining forest and climate objectives? Now then, who would like that? Anderson, I want to come back to you specifically on peatlands. I need that clarification personally. Who would like a trade question? Svein, can you do a trade question?
Well, obviously, barriers to trade creates a lot of challenges, and especially nowadays. There's a lot of changes to the trade patterns, and we risk ending up producing food in the wrong places as a result of this. So, again, back to transparency. I'd like to see more focus on the holistic view, see the whole food production value chain, and through that create trade policies. But anything that prevents free trade, I think is a negative. So the more trade that is done, the better. And this is also from a view of fighting poverty. It's also in terms of peace. Countries that do business together don't go to war with each other, and so on. So there are many reasons for this. But again, I am somewhat worried with what's happening now when it comes to free trade.
James, can I add in a little bit here?
Yeah, Anderson, please do.
I think in the end, the consumers have to speak. And where I think we're not represented here also, maybe, I know there's Consumer Goods Forum here, but the consumers have to choose. And we need platforms and information to allow the consumers to choose well. bilateral trades, multilateral trade sanctions or tariffs or barriers, all that is part and parcel of the democratic process of swinging left and swinging right, to me. But the consumers in the end, the younger generation, the millennial consumers, want to know that their products are being produced sustainably. So when they are able to choose with the right kind of information, these things are just, to me, noises. And in the end, the consumers will put their money where their mouth is.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Anderson. Our time is ticking away, and I want to make sure that, that I get the benefit of a clarification on this peatlands question. Hey, do you have that question, or otherwise, can we get it from the floor somewhere? Here, for you, Anderson. Can you provide a proof with data that the peat ecosystem is not degraded inside your concession?
I think it's a really interesting question. I would love to share a lot of information about this because we're going through a very robust study with Fauna and Flora International, at a point in time also with TNC, to understand the CCB, Carbon, Community, and Biodiversity Study. As a matter of fact, we just launched our annual report just the last few weeks ago. We are trying to understand the biodiversity and the carbon status of our restoration projects. This is, again, what I was trying to share, James, is our model is responsible production in the landscape, but we also believe in protection. So, again, we're one of the few companies in the world, as a matter of fact, who've committed 1-for-1. 1 hectare of plantation forest, 1 hectare of protection and conservation forest. And this is not backed only by donor funding, but actually it's backed with our shareholders' funding of $100 million for the next 10 years. So it is in every possible way for us that we're not talking about sustainability or protection, but we're putting money behind it and acting upon it. We spent in excess of $20 million in the last 3 years since 2015 when we announced this. So we may not be perfect by any means, but we're doing everything it takes to understand our eco-restoration inside our protection area, also how our production is impacting the restoration areas. And for us, we need to have informed science to make decisions. I think a lot of research needs to be grounded on real facts on the ground. We are trying to generate a lot of the primary data. We're the first company in Indonesia to invest in 3 eddy covariance flux towers. These are greenhouse gas flux towers that are installed in landscapes to understand what are the emissions, not only in carbon dioxide, but methane. Because methane is 6 times worse in terms of impact for greenhouse gas emissions compared to carbon dioxide. So we're not perfect by any means, and we're here to listen, we're here to learn. But we want to do everything to make sure that it's done right as well.
So I think just in answer to the question, it's no, you can't provide that proof, but you're working on it, and you'll make that data available, will you?
Absolutely. I think it is available actually now. If you would like to get some of the reports, it's posted online. Again, there's no absolute to data. It's progressive. If we want to wait for all the data to be perfect, we may wait 2 decades. So whatever we have, every year we'll report on it, and we'll stand true to public scrutiny. And whatever data we have, we will present, and every year when we get partial information, the last thing we want is to wait for all the information to be perfect and publishing it. Whatever partial information we have, we will publish it, and we will share with the stakeholders, and we invite everyone to also provide inputs to it. So.
Thank you. Well, that's certainly a great change in corporate culture, I'm sure. Can we have another question, please? Thank you. How does Indonesia's biodiesel target fit with the country's NDC and forest protection efforts? Pak Putera, that must be one for you.
Biodiesel target meaning the fuel mix, is that what?
I think you may understand that better than me.
Yeah, we are quite progressive in improving the content of biofuel in our energy mix. I think right now it's 2% or so, and we are moving toward higher percentage on that. And
Is that a production target or a consumption target?
that's in the consumption target.
Right.
Yeah, and but what I
Do you
want
have a production target
Yeah.
for biofuels?
I cannot say quite confidently about that because I don't have the figure and the information. But what I want to say is with regard to NDC, as maybe many of you realize that the greatest burden is on forestry in our case. 17.2% out of the 29% got to be fulfilled from forestry. And the energy sectors only about 11 something percent, and the other agriculture or waste a very small portions. So meaning the greatest attention we have to put is in the forestry sector. If we achieve the target, then we are on the right track toward the NDC.
Thank you very much. Let's have another question, Henk. And just before I read that question, have people got non-English questions that they'd like to ask? Can I just briefly see a show of hands? One there. Not many, maybe one. That's one, isn't it? Yeah, okay. It seems that Colombia could urgently learn from Brazil's experience, good and bad. Is that exchange of experience happening? Is there a good communication between Colombia and Brazil on forest, or sustainable forest management, forest conservation? That's one for you, Vice Minister. Are you getting translation?
Ok. Bueno, sí, efectivamente, una excelente pregunta porque sí es muy importante ese intercambio que se haga y ese intercambio de experiencias más estos países vecinos y que tenemos características muy similares. Y sí se ha realizado, realmente sí se ha hecho, han ido no solamente expertos y profesionales y técnicos del orden nacional del gobierno, sino también de la misma comunidad. De la zona de la Amazonía, Guaviare, Caquetá, han ido a Brasil también a conocer las experiencias. Sí, se ha realizado y es muy importante continuar fortaleciéndolo.
Of course, a portion of the Amazon Fund by Brazil's own design, I think 20%, could be available for performance-based sustainable forest management, etc., deforestation, mitigation outside Brazil. So is Colombia open to getting its hands on some of those resources, for example? Has Colombia considered trying to get money from the Amazon Fund? I hope we have translation for this.
Sí, claro, sí, efectivamente sí se ha considerado y para todo tipo de inversión e intercambios que se tengan que realizar entre los países y fortalecer obviamente la gestión.
Have you tried already? ¿Han tratado ya?
No, aún no, pero estamos en el proceso.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Another question, please. Do you believe the SDG target of ending deforestation by 2020 will be met? If not, when do you think it will be met? Let's go down the line. Who thinks that SDG target is realistic? Just yes, no?
No.
No? Anderson?
Globally,
That's the SDG goal?
it'll be very challenging, but we all have to work hard. So.
No. Svein?
By 2020, no.
No. Putera?
2 years from now, no.
No, of course not. Next question, please. Tragically, I should say. In the spirit of non-pragmatic questions, okay? That's not the spirit that is the spirit we want. In a world that is seeing an authoritarian political supercycle, moving away from not just international cooperation, but even trade and value-based alliances, how do we make this a winning agenda? Are we fighting for a larger slice of shrinking ODA climate finance cake? I think whoever asked that question knows the answer to it, but Minister, why don't you have a go at that?
Yo diría que al final del día, lo único que queda es la organización y la movilización social, porque incluso un país como Ecuador, que tiene una constitución que protege derechos, que reconoce derechos de la naturaleza, puede cambiar su constitución muy fácilmente como en cualquier país de América Latina. Al final lo que queda es la posibilidad de que la misma población, la gente, los pueblos indígenas organizados peleen por mantener los bosques y las políticas que defiendan los bosques. Eso es lo que queda al final del día.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, let's ask the gentleman who's raised his hand very patiently to ask his question. Can we have a microphone to this back corner, please? Thank you.
Yes, we have. Thank you. My name is Nils. I work for the Rainforest Foundation in Norway. I have a follow-up question to you, Yara, about trade. Because as we know, a range of companies, private sector companies, have committed to zero deforestation. Implementing is not doing perfect, but they are striving towards it. At the same time, we also know that other companies continue business as usual, where deforestation is a kind of part of their business model. And when you say that we need to continue with free trade, do you think that, for example, public procurement policies should give preference to no deforestation goods? End of question.
Well, thank you very much for that, and I think absolutely so. That should be part of the procurement policies, and both in the public, but also as we talked about for the consumers, allowing the consumers to have transparency and understand the way at which food is produced, because only then we will be able to change the behavior if we put the right incentives behind, and there's a clear link between this and consumer behavior, but also financial incentives for the companies and the farmers. It is possible to produce enough food on existing farmland. The problem today is that the land area doesn't really have the right value. Every 3 years, land areas the size of Germany is left behind, degraded of all its nutrients. And unless we start to put a price tag on that, that will continue. So to put that into policy, yes, I absolutely agree to that. And that doesn't have to be in contrast to having free trade.
Thank you for that. We must keep this promise to let anybody who has a question other than in English, a non-English question, they must be able to ask it. Do we have any such questions?
One here.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Hello. Sorry, I speak in English because I think the one that I want to respond, that I'm Woro from Indonesia, from Cikalahari, the Ecuador forest, and I would like to respond to what Mr. Anderson Tanoto said about the peat. He said that there is a risk of unmanaged peat forest compared to the managed peat forest, which is, I think, is not necessarily the case. For example, I mean, like, it's really depend on unmanaged forest. The risk that may happen in that area is only like encroachment, for example. But managed peat forest in a bad way, it's has like higher risk rather than unmanaged peat forest. For example, like, it's really depend on in managed peat forests, they usually build the canal, they usually drain the peat forest so it becomes dry, and that is the main cause of the damaging in the peat forest. So it is really on the existing of the drainage rather than like whether it is managed or unmanaged. I think that's just as a clarification for what Mr. Anderson Tanoto said. And one of the proof that, I mean, we can share from Indonesia, in this case is Riau province, is that in 2015, there is also fires happen in pulp and paper and also in palm oil concession. So this is really contradicts on what he said. I think it's just like giving some proof from the field. Thank you.
Anderson, do you want to respond to it?
No, I think, thank you for the question. I don't know what the question was specifically, but
I think it was a correction rather than a
yeah, but that's a question. If you look at real data, Global Forest Watch, you can go online right now actually. If you look at, starting from where the El Nino started in June 2015, yeah, until where it's officially ended maybe December 2015. It was proven in our areas that where we manage, there were significantly less fires compared to any other areas outside the areas that were not managed. You can go online right now, globalforestwatch.com/fire.
So of the managed areas, your managed areas were less prone to fire than other managed areas, although still more prone to fire than unmanaged areas.
Well, just look at the fire incidences because you can see hotspots. So let's not say prone to fire or not prone to fire. Let's see real fire. So I think
Your area is burned less than other managed areas. Although
our areas actually did not have any fire, very little fire incidences. All fires were actually suppressed within half a hectare, essentially. Because the goal for fire for us is not about only suppression but prevention. Again, the fires in Indonesia are not fires like in Australia or South Africa, where fires have self-combusting fires from lightning-related matters, because the humidity in Indonesia is 70, 80, sometimes 95%, as everyone knows. So fires are actually man-made fires in Indonesia. So the goal is actually to ask, why are the fires starting in the first place? So we started the prevention program since 2013, 14, which was also actually an El Nino year, but wasn't as severe as 15. And we realized that it's actually much more cost-efficient to prevent the fires from starting than to rent helicopters for $10,000 an hour to put water on top of fire. And that's when we relaunched the program in a large scale across all our landscapes in 2015. And the data speaks for itself. So,
okay. Thank you, Anderson. I think we have a minute left, and so let's call it time for one more good question. If you have one, Heather. Can northern consumers really, I mean really, drive change? I guess Pak Putera is a bit skeptical about that, based on the experience of flexi that Indonesia has had.
Well, probably the question is not can, not but will or not. So we are waiting for the equal responsibility from the other end. So we expect a lot.
This distinction between market access and price premium, is it no good to you? Actually, you need a premium for these kind of exercises to be worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly.
Svein, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think it's possible to play a positive role here. If you look at the transport sector and take this country as an example on how policy can drive the demand for electrical cars, and see how that has helped some of the car manufacturers to get enough volumes to create the right scale of production, and see how that has impacted that. It's possible. And I think there is a willingness to do it as well, and I don't think we should underestimate that, and to create some good examples of what we can do in order to drive demand. And for me, it's not only about driving premiums for the food produced for the farmers. It's about first helping them to get going to produce in a sustainable way. And that's actually self-funding. It will create greater profitability, but it needs a little bit of help in the beginning. And I think the Nordic countries could play a role in creating some good examples of that.
Thank you very much for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. Can you please join with me in thanking our terrific panelists, Adriana, Anderson, Svein, Putera, Minister, or Vice Minister.
Okay, but don't get up.
I should acknowledge that Anderson defended his corner quite stoutly. Well done.
Okay. So you're not going to see me again behind the mic until 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Happily. So I need to give you instructions about how you're going to eat now, tonight, and tomorrow. So remember what Ruka told us in Taraji, you greet people by saying, is the food ready yet? Okay, so I'm the person here to tell you that the food is ready, and here's how you get it. So today at lunch, there's going to be a more informal lunch with food available out in this foyer and in the Brasserie restaurant behind us where the breakfast is served in the hotel. There will also, though, be a special lunch presentation hosted by Indonesia's peatland restoration agency on local initiatives for peatland restoration. So quite relevant to what we were talking about in this session. And I think, yeah, there's a flyer about the event is just posted, and it's taking place in the Lofoten room over here, but there's only 80 seats, so you got to roll. And lunch will be provided in there as well as in the other places, so you can take your choice. Tonight's dinner has been advanced because there's something going on, I don't know. Some people might, I don't know. But so it actually begins promptly at 6 o'clock, which means that when you finish your second round of parallel sessions at 5:30, you pretty much need to head directly out this door, and there will be kind people directing you on the 10-minute walk down to City Hall. So we need to get down there, go through security, and get seated for a dinner to be served at 6, so that those who care about watching this thing can, go on and watch the game. And remember to bring your conference ID to the thing there. You'll need it to get in. Then tomorrow at lunchtime, there will be more of a formal sit-down lunch in the brasserie and the Holberg restaurant. People will be able to direct you. But there will also be 2 special lunch presentations in parallel. One is hosted by the Green Climate Fund on REDD+ results-based payment, also in Lofoten, so about 80 people will be able to fit into that. And another one hosted by the government of Colombia, talking about their strategy to control deforestation. So a follow-on the minister's remarks here. And I should also mention, during the morning coffee break tomorrow, there will be a demonstration of some of these cool tools related to forest monitoring, I think also in the Lofoten room. But there's a map available on the screens now behind me, as well as on your app and on the screens out in the lobby, or you can just ask a kind person to direct you where you need to be. So I think those were all the announcements I was supposed to make for you. I hope you'll agree that we've gotten off to a good start here, a lot of rich stuff to do, but don't linger too long at lunch, because the parallel sessions start promptly at 2, and it's really quite a rich smorgasbord of speakers and panelists and topics, 2 rounds of 4 sessions. So we'll see you around between now and tomorrow afternoon at 2, but I hope you'll come back enriched when you see me up here again with a lot of new ideas from the conference sessions. So again, thanks to the panel, and thanks to all of you.